Hi, we're back for more how and why about voice. And today we're going to talk about actual voicing, so how we produce the sounds that we then shape into speech. And oftentimes when we are working in voice therapy, our speech language pathologist will tell us to hydrate and to make sure you're well hydrated because a well easier for us to use and is less susceptible to injury. So we're going to explore the how and the why behind this statement or this common thing to be asked as a patient in voice therapy. So first we're going to give an introduction to the larynx or the voice box. Again, if you feel on your throat, you can feel your thyroid cartilage. That's sometimes referred to as the Adam's apple. That's one of the main cartilages within the larynx. So the larynx is a complex of cartilage and muscle and soft tissue. Again, so this right here is a kind of a slice down the middle. We see our tongue, and directly below that, going into the airway, this is a side view of our larynx. And an enlarged image here, again, this large cartilage that is protruded, that's our thyroid cartilage. If we were to take a look from above, say with a mirror or with an endoscope, we often look at images like this. So this is just a cartoon image. On this slide, we have actual pictures of people's larynges. So again, we're looking down. You can think about kind of going over the cliff beyond the tongue and looking straight down into the throat. So this bottom part of the image is the front of the patient. The top part of the image is the back. So this is the back wall of the throat right here. We can see just a little tiny bit of the tongue in this individual, and then there's a flap of cartilage right here called the epiglottis. And then looking down here, we see this V-shaped structure. Those are the vocal folds, and within this complex, that's called the larynx. Here's a closer up image. This is of a different individual. We can see the vocal folds in this individual are nice and pearly white. The edges are straight and smooth. And there's nothing sort of hanging out on the vocal folds, or there's nothing that looks strange. Directly below the vocal folds, that's our airway. So we're looking down into the trachea. And in this individual, we can see part of those tracheal rings, rings of cartilage that help keep our airway nice and open. So oftentimes when we get an evaluation of our voice, we'll have an endoscopy, so a camera will go through the mouth or up through the nose, and these are the images that we as speech pathologists or sometimes otolaryngologists, ear, nose, and throat doctors will look at. So the structures in our larynx move so that our vocal folds can open and close. When we're sitting at rest, our vocal folds are nice and wide open, so our airway is nice and wide open, and so we can get air in and out. In our last session, we talked about the physics of how we get air in and out, but we do that with a nice open larynx if we're just resting and breathing or exercising and breathing. However, we can close the vocal folds together when we're voicing or when we're coughing or when we're swallowing, when we do a few other tasks. So in order to produce voice, we first inhale. Again, last time we had talked about how we can inhale. And then we close our vocal folds. So we go from an inhale with open vocal folds to an exhale with closed vocal folds. And then we exhale while keeping those vocal folds closed. We have to push air out through the vocal folds. So then we can think back to know that we do need a good amount of that active exhalation, that big breath support to send air through a closed area. When we send air through closed vocal folds, they vibrate, and then they create the sound that comprises our speech. We can change the tension of the vocal folds, and that changes the pitch of the voice. So if we tighten the vocal folds, that results in a faster vibration and a higher pitch. So if you can think of, say, playing a guitar, if you make that guitar string tighter, give it more tension, then it vibrates quicker, and then we hear a higher pitch. And then on the other hand, if we have looser vocal folds, that results in slower vibration and a lower pitch. So how do the vocal folds actually vibrate? Now, instead of looking top down, we're looking kind of at a slice. So a slice through the front. And so our vocal folds are these kind of U-shaped structures right here, and they're together. We have actively closed those vocal folds together. We send air out. They start to open from the bottom to the top, then they're opening and air is going out. They start to close also from the bottom to the top, and this is repeated over and over again. So you can see that there are cycles where the vocal folds are closed and there's no air coming out, and then also cycles where the vocal folds are open and there is air coming out. And so that's depicted on this image. So this is airflow. So vocal folds are closed, there's no air coming out, then they open and air comes out, and then they close back again, and it's this rhythmic vibratory pattern that's translated into changes in air pressure, which we then perceive as vibrations on our eardrum and then as sound. So that is how we create voice, and then how we can appreciate voice through our hearing system. So again, we need this repetitive, regular vibration, opening and closing of the vocal folds, which creates changes in air pressure, which we perceive as sound. So taking a closer look now at one of these slices of a vocal fold, it's created of 3 different types of layers. So this is the outermost layer here. That is what we call the membrane layer. So it's an epithelium, so just a layer on top that is a mucosa. So if you think about the inside of our mouth or the inside of our nose, that's also mucosal epithelium. And there's a thin sheen of slippery mucus that covers this area. And then this is the area that oscillates the most when we are voicing, when we are sending air through our vocal folds. Directly below that, there are layers that are called the extracellular layer, sometimes the tendon layer. The fancy name is the lamina propria. This layer also vibrates during phonation. And then finally, the deepest layer right here, this is a muscular layer. So there's a muscle, it's called the vocalis muscle. Like other muscles in our body, it can relax and contract. And so that provides the tone, that stiffness, the stability to hold the vocal folds closed, and mass on which to vibrate. So I have just an image here, an animation of what the vocal folds look like when they're actually vibrating. So just to note, our vocal folds vibrate too fast for us to see with our visual system. But if we have a specialized camera, it'll take images and at a certain point in the vibratory cycle, and so it'll animate and it'll appear like the vocal folds are flapping in the breeze. So we're going to look at that now. So you can see those vocal folds move in and out and in and out. You can see the larynx also open to breathe in and then come in and then again do that vibration. So that white layer, you can see actually the light reflecting off of that. That means that that is moist and is vibrating nicely. So in order for vocal folds to vibrate efficiently, they need to be moist, pliable, and plumped up. And if we are dehydrated, then we lose moisture, we lose that pliability, and we lose that mass, that plumpness. And so then we have to work harder to get our voice out. This is an MRI image of a larynx that, is from a cadaver. And we can see this edge of the vocal folds. And then after dehydration, you can see that there's actual structural change there that comes back after rehydration. So again, with dehydration, we have to increase the force of which we send air through our lungs and the force of bringing those vocal folds close together So we have decreased efficiency. We also have a decreased pitch range, so the range at which we can use our pitch. And then also, if we're dehydrated, our vocal folds are more prone to injury. So how can we stay hydrated? We can drink plenty of water. That keeps our whole body hydrated. So oftentimes you might hear to drink 64 fluid ounces of water a day. To increase the amount of hydration on the surface, again, that mucosal layer, you can also breathe in humidified or nebulized air or inhale steam. Just be careful inhaling steam because we don't want to inhale air that's too hot. We don't want to burn ourselves. And then finally, to stay hydrated, we want to limit our intake of caffeine and alcohol because that can dry out the tissues, again, resulting in a more effortful voice. That's all we have today. Again, please feel free to reach out with any questions. Thank you, and we will see you tomorrow.